If you are chasing a title, you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. When I came in as the executive assistant to the CFO, I wasn't chasing a title. I wasn't vying to become the CFO. And even when I got to that CFO role, I wasn't vying to become the CEO. It happened through opportunity, through taking advantage of everything that came to me and never saying no, just pure curiosity.
To kind of lay the foundation for the listeners, what does your company do?
We work predominantly with CPGs, so the brands that you purchase off the shelves at the grocery store. We work with them to reduce, eliminate sugar in their products and bring clean label versions without sacrificing taste, texture, or experience that you get when you consume foods.
And you actually do the manufacturing? Do you mix, you process? How does that work?
We do the manufacturing of the ingredients. So we predominantly work with crystalline or powder versions of the product, and we can blend those together. Sugar is kind of a magical ingredient in that we predominantly think of it as a sweetener, but it's also a bulking agent. It provides mouthfeel, it provides texture, it reacts to a number of chemical reactions under heat and things like that. And so there's not a one-to-one replacement for sugar on the market. So when you start to reduce sugar using alternative ingredients, you lose some sort of attribute that sugar has, whether it be bulking, whether it be sweetness. And so we work with those customers to pull out or reduce sugar by either using a single component or blending it with something else to maintain sweetness. And then we also do the milling, so particle reduction. And the best way to explain that would be the sugar that you would use to make a cookie, that granulated sugar, is the same as powdered sugar that you would use for like a glaze or a frosting, but the particle size has been reduced to eliminate grittiness, and that kind of great consistency that you get with a frosting. And so we do that as far as manufacturing. But when it comes to the finished product on the shelf, we do not do that.
Okay. And do you have a laboratory? So if I come to you and say, hey, I've got these chocolate chips, we're growing 100% a month. We want to replace sugar. We want it to taste even better and have it grow 200% a month just from the virality of everybody loving it. How do you work with us?
We do have a lab. Most of our customers are, we do work with smaller brands or startups, but most of our customers are on shelves already. And the reduced sugar or the sugar elimination it's an added SKU or an added product line to something that's already on the market. And in the food industry, everything that you see on the shelf started as a idea or a prototype. And to make your grandma's cookies in your kitchen is very different than taking it to a manufacturer and making it at large scale. And so we do work with customers in that benchtop sampling, but a lot of our customers also have they have their own testing. I would say where our expertise comes into play is we're experts with the ingredients that we use, and we understand how they react with other ingredients and how water activity plays a role in all of the science things. So we play a bigger role on that side of things when they go through their bench testing and say, my cookie was so dry, what happened? That's where we come in and help advise.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I wonder what would be different if Americans cut out all sugar from their diets. I haven't had processed sugar 10 years, really long time. And I make over 90% of my own food. I do a lot of, I call it experimental baking with my sister's kids, to make blueberry muffins and all that without that, but also have it taste really good. But what would be different if that happened? What's your opinion on disease and other things that are going on? I think it would be huge.
Yeah, I think personally, I think that sugar has a major role in the metabolic disease that we see in Americans, which is just like an underlying issue for so many diseases that we see. But I think that sugar has just become because it's cheap. I mean, at the end of the day, sugar is cheap and it's an easy way to bulk your product. It's an easy way to sweeten your product. And uh, again, personally, my opinion is that sugar is the most addictive product on the shelves. You just need more of it. Um, and so I'm kind of in alignment with you in I haven't fully eliminated sugar in my household, but it's very limited in what we do consume. Um, and having kids is where I really saw the shift. I grew up as an athlete, and so nutrition has always been very important to me. I was a college athlete, and so understanding not only how the physiology of an athlete, but also the physiology of a woman and how nutrition impacts that at certain times and certain times of your life. So I've been very health conscious, but I really got interested in it when I started having kids and started, researching dyes and sugar and how it affects kids. And you see it. I mean, you see how kids are unable to focus when they have high sugar intake. You see the behavioral shifts. And it's quite sad because it's kind of like a drug user that really has like this outer body experience where they can you can see like they're off the rails, but also they can't control it. And so I I do think that sugar plays a huge part. I think the trouble with eliminating it though is it's so ingrained into every product on the shelves for consumers that a lot of times they don't even know. When you look at a label, it doesn't always say cane sugar. It doesn't always say granulated sugar. I mean, it's masked by um, so many different types of vernacular, and so for the human that is trying to eliminate sugar and trying to be better, it's very difficult for them to cut out sugar fully without fully understanding how all the different ways that it can be listed on a label.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes just a general category carbohydrates. You don't know what goes into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Curious, what was your sport?
I was a runner. It's track and field and cross country.
Love that. So longer distance stuff?
The 800 and 1500, which is technically mid distance, but I feel like it's a sprint.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, you have to be in such great shape to be competitive that way.
You do. You do.
Yeah, I've run I don't know, probably well over a dozen marathons, completed 3 Ironmans. I love endurance stuff, but after 7 knee surgeries now it's more stretching and and other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I stopped running for quite some time. It wreaked havoc on my body. There was kind of a mental component of it was a job for so long. And I just actually 10-ish weeks ago for myself said, I'm going to go out for a run. And that turned into signing up for a half marathon. And so I'm like in the thick of training right now.
I love it. I enjoy it. I actually like the trail runs better than the road runs just because I love being outside
Yeah.
and it's amazing. Did a couple of ultra marathons and it didn't feel like 50-mile days when you're out there looking at the trees and the
Yeah.
trails and the wildlife and all of it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I look at your journey. So 2019 to 2024, becoming CEO, starting as executive assistant. That's a pretty quick path to be the CEO of a $30 million plus business and growing. And I think you're in an environment right now where you can explode the growth based on the health focus in the United States. Talk about that journey a little bit. Like, what led you to take the job in the first place, and then what were your sort of bigger learnings going from EA to CEO?
Yeah. So growing up, I mean, I grew up in a very traditional Christian household. My parents are still married, was have nothing to complain about. I Being an athlete, naturally, I wanted to, go into like sports physiology or something along those lines. And I took my first chemistry class and I realized if this is just the start of it, I'm never gonna succeed. I just was not the chemistry aspect of it just was not clicking for me. And so being a college athlete, it's a full-time job. And I switched over to business. It was a very general business degree. And when I graduated, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I still kind of had that pull of athletics, sports, the human body. And so I went into personal training, but my real desire was to be a mom. I wanted to be a mom more than anything. I had great role models. I was raised by an amazing mom. And I wanted to pass that along. And my husband and I had quite a bit of infertility having kids. And when we finally were able to have my first, I was awarded the opportunity to stay home, it was a dream come true until it wasn't. About 7 months in, I was just so unhappy, but also struggling internally with, was I being ungrateful? Like, this is what I've always wanted. I'm awarded this. And so internally, I was battling with, what is my purpose? I'm very driven, very type A. And, um, and so my husband came home from work one evening and I was building up this resentment unnecessarily. And he worked in a very like customer facing industry and working with the public all day long. And so he would come home and he's ready to unwind and not really have any conversations. And I was communicating with a toddler all day who you're really just negotiating all day. And he just asked, how was your day? How was things going? And I just exploded. Like, I have to go back to work. I don't have any purpose in life. He was so blindsided and like, okay, so let's do it. And so Icon Foods had posted a role for an executive assistant to a CFO at the time. And I looked at it as, this is my way out. I like took finance classes in college. I know enough to enter into the job world, but certainly not qualified to do much more than really show up. And a lot of people think of finance as Excel spreadsheets and numbers, and you have to be great at math. And I found that, yes, there's a level of that, but it was really storytelling. It was taking a set of financials and building a story around what's going on. And I really fell in love with that creative side of understanding all of the cogs in the wheels. And, sales, they sell something and it contributes to the top line. And then operations, manufacturing, they create something and it kind of takes away from that. And you're left with a little bit at the end. And how do we make sure that there's stuff at the bottom? So I really just fell in love with creating these stories. And about 5 months, 4 or 5 months after I started, the CFO at the time had some family issues going on in Hawaii and had to step away. And we weren't set up to be remote. And we were a smaller company at the time, doing 7, 8 million in annual revenue. And she went to the founder and said, I think Kash could do this. I don't think you really need to bring anyone in. She's pretty intelligent. She'll pick things up quickly. And she's a little bit of a scrappy little fighter. And I still look back and think that they were both crazy. But I'm so grateful because it was an opportunity and it was also the springboard for the rest of the elevation. For that moment in time, there were these two people that put no limitations on what I could or couldn't do. Only I did. I had the power to do that. I could have said absolutely not, put someone over me, bring someone else in, or what the heck, let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? I don't have a job tomorrow. I've been there. And so after she left, it just kind of all, it was very much a sink or swim kind of environment. And you have to figure it out. There's no one there. But I had so many resources around me in colleagues in the industry, Tom being in the industry for as long as he had been, um, that the athlete in me hated losing more than I hated than I loved winning, right? Like it was the loss that was more of a heartbreak than winning. And so I wasn't really driving for, a title or a position. I was just so consumed with learning and understanding how all of these wheels kind of click together. And the ascension just kind of happened very naturally, very quickly, but very naturally because I was open to taking every single opportunity, every learning experience, whether it directly tied into my job description or not. So a very long-winded answer.
No, I actually like that. I think we put way too much weight on, the sort of paper pedigree, if you will. And I always like the simplicity of how Buffett talks about it. You want intelligence, energy, and integrity. If you don't want the last one, don't even try. And if we look for that, we don't, we'll give people chances that really deserve it and will create the most value for the business. And then when they say, oh, well, they didn't have a degree, that's why they didn't work out. I've hired thousands of people over the years, and a lot of people with degrees didn't work out either. So it makes the assumption that if you have a degree from a university, somehow you're going to just be successful or be able to create that value. Um,
No, I disagree with
I
that.
cheated a bit and watched a number of your interviews on different podcasts, but I love how you look for identified talent when you hire from the outside. Are you willing to share a little bit about that story?
Yeah, I mean, it really tacks on to what you just said. There is a level of degree that helps, but when you look at someone with a degree, there's a couple ways you can look at it, right? When I did go back and get my master's in accounting and finance, and the foundations were super helpful. But when I come into the office every day, the problems are not black and white. There is no solution at the end of the day, like storybook solution. It's you have to find it. Whereas when you're going through school, there's black and white, right? you just there's an answer that the professor is looking for at the end of the day, and if you don't get to that, it's go back to the drawing board. Um, and so, and today with AI, I think it's even more irrelevant. Probably not a popular opinion, but it's my own. But when it comes to hiring for people, I'm looking for someone that is going to be a little scrappy, that's going to look for the opportunity, and that's not necessarily looking for a paycheck. When it comes to our lives, we all have a level of responsibilities. I have a mortgage. My kids have become accustomed to a certain level of life, but it's not why I show up to work every day. I show up because I genuinely love what we do. I'm curious about where we're going to be tomorrow, how we're going to get there. And so it's so much more than a paycheck. And so for me, um, if this isn't the direction that you were trying to get at, please hold me. But for me, when I interview someone, the first question that I ask is, what do you do on a Saturday or Sunday morning? And it kind of throws people off because they're like, where is she going with this? That's a weird question. But what I'm looking for is someone that is, seizing life, right? Like, we have just a finite amount of time here. And someone who, I just want to Netflix and chill. I want to relax. I'm looking for, the reprieve from the week, is probably not the person that's going to fare well here, because it tells me that when the going gets tough, they're probably going to slow down. It's going to be a little harder for them to keep up with the fluidity of our industry. It also tells me that when they have opportunity presented to them, that they're not going to take it. And I firmly believe how you do anything is how you do everything. Now, let me be clear, there is a time for Netflix and chill. I do I do have moments of downtime. I do have time that I want to just relax with my peeps and throw my feet up. But if you look at my Saturdays and Sundays on a macro level, it's probably less than 5% that is spent just Netflixing and chilling or relaxing and not looking at the opportunities available to me. And so once they get through that, I and we bring them in, which is a whole nother process. I try not to be a full decision maker in those. I try to engage the stakeholders that are going to be working with them and rubbing shoulders with them. But once they get in, the people that have really succeeded and that have grown in their roles, climbed the corporate ladder, have very similar stories to mine. They came in and they just wanted to learn. They maybe weren't the most qualified on paper. They maybe didn't have the most tenure in the industry or in a career, but if you asked them to go get forklift certified, or you ask them to go build boxes, if you ask them to go count inventory, there was a no hesitation yes, because they're willing to learn, they're willing to be a part of a team, and they're willing to understand what drives them to be successful. So I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. And so, a real quick question for you: what do you do on a Saturday morning?
Well, I love to be outside as well. I live in the desert, so I capitalize on the warm weather we have. But I love to golf. I grew up with a family of golfers, and I'm
Yeah.
raising a family of golfers. So I enjoy that I can get out, be active, and engage with all ages and skill levels.
I love that. I usually don't tell people what I do on the weekends because I don't want to freak them out. But I normally get up around 4 a.m. So on the weekends, I'll often sleep in till 5. I'll spend 2 hours writing for a book, and then I'm writing songs for an album. And then I'm just, every minute is kind of organized around goals I'm trying to accomplish because I just love all these different things that I'm in the middle of.
Yeah.
But most people, they just want to unplug. Maybe is it most people? I don't know, but a lot of people want to unplug, and they're not the drivers in our business. I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also say too, I'm also an early riser, embarrassingly. So you're making me feel better about myself. Um, but I would also say, like, I just read a quote that when you look at some of the younger generations, the millennials specifically, that are really full force into the workforce right now, there's a lot of talk around like work life balance and stress and passion. And I read a quote actually yesterday that said the difference between passion and stress is how you look at your job. Like someone who is stressed is showing up for a paycheck, and someone who is passionate is showing up for, results or the outcome or the opportunity. That one hit me because if you're showing up for a check, what are you doing? It's life is so short. You should be doing what you want.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that goes into that that doesn't make sense to me, like work-life balance. I think it's one big blended life, always is. You move around the time that you have going in. And if you're going to do it, do it. Like lean in and actually do it. And then, as different generations come along, and I've, I'm on my 8th company now, I've started from scratch, thousands of employees over the years. They keep saying, well, this generation is different and you have to approach it this way or that way. I think there's a lot of things that are timeless. And for me, what's the value that we're trying to create as a business, and how would you measure that? And then every team inside the company, what's the value that team was designed to create? How do you know they're doing it? And let's focus on that. And it never made sense to me that an employee it would be okay if we agree to pay them a certain amount of money and they agreed to do these things or create this value ultimately. that it would be okay for them not to do it unless the company gets it right to establish their why. Because if they purchase something, they expect 100% of what they purchased outside of it. So it's a really weird double standard. So I never gave it a lot of thought. I would just focus everybody on creating value, and what interesting, what happens, it doesn't matter what generation you come from, they all start acting like the CEO of their own role. So I just said a lot there, but what do you think about that generally?
No, I completely agree with that. And we within the company, we have kind of come to that mindset as well. What we do is so niche, and I think that there has to be a level of passion about what you're doing, and there has to be a level of buy-in, whatever that buy-in. The buy-in is different for everyone. But for us, I think transparency with your employees is so important. Understanding what it is that they want, um, helping them establish goals, writing them down, because goals that are not written down are just dreams that aren't going to come to fruition. Um, and if their goals don't align with our value or our proposed outcomes, um, then it's having the tough conversation of like, you're a good person, we're a good company, I'm a good person, but we're probably not aligned. And I think where a lot of leaders, you know, maybe have some ailments is that's where the conversation stops instead of continuing it on. And we may not be aligned, but let me help you find something that you are passionate about. You can stay here, you can continue to bring the value that you are bringing, but let's find something that really fulfills you and invigorates you to wake up in the morning. I totally understand that what we do isn't for everyone, but I think as leaders, we have a responsibility to have the conversation from start to finish with those employees. And we may not be it, and we're not going to be here forever, but let's find you something where you are a fit, where you can have the same experiences and passions and reason for getting up in the morning that I do around something that you're passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. In watching a number of your interviews and doing some research, getting ready for this discussion, what I admired the most about you is your approach to leadership and how you think about it and how you're evolving. And you're actually the kind of leader that I love working with and working for. And there's not a lot of them out there. So thank you for the work you're doing. Uh, and when I think about leadership, to me, the best definition keeps getting simpler for me over time, and it evolves. But my current definition of leadership is creating value with and through others. So I think we as leaders create the environment from which everybody creates value. But talk about your leadership style. I've heard you talk about servant leadership, but it's not just that, it's so much more. So what is leadership to you, and how does that manifest?
Yeah, I think leadership for me is understanding that I get to sit in the seat because of the people around me. Without the people around me, I don't have a workplace to come into. I don't have a seat to sit in. I don't have a company to run. And so I think first and foremost, you have to recognize and be grateful for the people that show up, whether it's, you know, half-assed or not. They're showing up, and that awards you the opportunity to be there. I would say secondly, being transparent. I understand as leaders, we can't be transparent about everything, but there's very few conversations and issues and things that happen within the business that have to be completely confidential. And so when you start to open up some of that transparency, I think that you get a lot of that buy-in that I talked about earlier when people aren't walking on eggshells of like, am I going to lose my job? We're going through a very tumultuous time in our country. And so if you can have those conversations and be transparent as much as possible with your employees, I think that you get a level of buy-in, and you also get this level of relational trust. And we're not friends per se. Probably I'm not going to go out and get a beer with my direct reports, but we've built enough of a relationship that they know where I stand with them and they feel comfortable to come in and have those conversations and ask the questions. And sometimes I have to say I can't talk about it. Sometimes I have to say I don't know. And I would say finally is stewarding. Like when we talk about servant leadership, it's being a steward of people, right? You are again awarded the opportunity to lead people, which is, something to be proud of, but it's also a big responsibility. Like you have people that you're responsible for, that they're ultimately responsible for others, feeding children, putting roofs over heads. And when you can think about it from that level of, these people again are not just showing up for a paycheck, they're showing up for a greater good. And I'm responsible to ensure that we are doing well so they can continue meeting their responsibilities, um, and growing them. Like for me, I feel such a responsibility to give back. I had so many amazing opportunities and I'm so excited for all the opportunities that I still haven't experienced, but they were given to me freely. I mean, 4 to 5 months in, I didn't have to have the trust for someone to be like, you could run our $7 to $8 million company from the finance side of things. But there was that opportunity. And there were so many after that didn't have to be given to me, but were continued to be given. And so I feel a responsibility to give those opportunities back. People are going to fail. That's okay. Hopefully, they're not making the same failures over and over again. But giving those opportunities and giving back to people that may not be qualified, that aren't the sharpest crayon in the box, they have the same skill. Like they have the same abilities to get there. It may take them a little longer. It may take them a few more tries, but I feel such a responsibility to give that back. And we have leaders that, are leaders by title only, and they hold these roles because of pride or ego or what have you, and don't give back or hold their roles and remove those abilities or opportunities to others. And what I mean by that is if there's someone that's going to take my seat someday, I hope they are, because I have bigger things that I want to do. I've got books that I want to write. I've got so many other things on my to-do list and my aspiration list that I want to do. And so there is somebody that's going to come along and take my seat someday. And when that person comes along, I have no problem stepping aside. If they're the right person for the role, if they have the skills and they have the passion. And I think so many leaders don't have that same mindset. It's hold information close to the vest. This person's not ready. They don't have enough time in the industry or in the business. And they're so worried about holding this role, and it becomes this level of fear. For what? Uh, so hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, and I look at that and say, are you focusing on how you're seen, or are you focusing on the value that you can create with others? And when you focus on the value side of it, it's not that important how you're seen. Like titles never really meant much to me, but here I am, basically leading all my companies, so it's easy to say. Uh, but I didn't care. We're here to create value. I'm on the front lines. I'm wherever I needed to be at every point in time. If it was critical for me to be there, it didn't matter what it was. And one of my companies, it was a global aerospace business, thousands of customers, 60 countries, and I went just about everywhere as that thing was being built. And uh, you do whatever it takes. And I've heard you say this too. If you're leading by example that way, we're not doing it. So, oh, look at me, I'm willing to go out and sweep the floor. No, no, no. A customer's coming in, we're sweeping it up because nobody took care of it beforehand, and then we're going to address that, in the future. But we lead by example. We lead by focusing on the value we want to create, not how we're seen. I think that's a really big message for up and coming leaders or leaders that are actually there. What is it all about for you? Because I can't feel great inside for those that are there for the wrong reasons, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I say the same thing. I wish that I had a way to express exactly what you just said because I've said that so many times. And, I don't care if you call me the janitor, but that's easy for me to say in my role. And I know that that's what people, that are up and coming say. Like, that's easy for her to say she wants to be the janitor when she's already achieved a CEO title or a CFO title. But to that, I guess what I would say is if you are chasing a title, you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. When I came in as the executive assistant to the CFO, I wasn't chasing a title. I wasn't I wasn't vying to become the CFO. And even when I got to that CFO role, I wasn't vying to become the CEO. It happened through opportunity, through, you know, taking advantage of everything that came to me and never saying no and just pure curiosity. And so for the up and comers, I would say if you are chasing a title, I would challenge you to dig really deep and understand why. What is the why behind the title? And I've had these conversations with some people when you ask the five whys, like you continue to ask why. And a lot of them, when you really have those conversations, it's, well, because I want the accolades. And then it's like, well, why do you want the accolades? Well, because it comes with pay. Well, why do you want the pay? Well, because I want to be the most successful of my, ring of friends. Well, why do you want to be the most successful? Well, because it will make my parents proud. And when you start to dig, it's like you're not doing this for you. What makes you happy? And when you can really dig into that why, which will take you to a very vulnerable place, which is probably why you love running, why I fall in love with running, is because you get a chance to get so vulnerable with yourself. And why are we doing this? Why? I'll tell you my why is not because I'm a CEO. It's because I get to walk in and see the growth and the humans that allow me to sit here. It's showing up and seeing our customers, face adversity in getting their products to shelves. It's um it's so much more than a title. And I think that people really need to dig deep and understand truly what their goals are and what brings them purpose and their personal value.
Yeah. Yeah, my driver, and I guess you could say I've kind of entered the legacy phase of my life. But my primary driver or purpose is to, um, perpetuate or push out into the world holistic value creation behavior. So money is wildly important. Most of us say it's not, or just virtue signaling, because when you look at what they do, it's mostly about the money. How we feel is everything. And one of the things I love about your business is I'd say the easiest hack to elevate positive, productive emotional energy is stay away from processed sugar that way. But emotional energy is scarcest commodity on the planet because it supercharges everything we do. And then spiritual value creation to me is about connectedness, family, community is important to you, team members together. And I always loved doing all kinds of programs with employees or team members is how I thought of them to drive those connections because we're all on this developmental journey going forward. So I think sometimes when we talk about, hey, what's your purpose? What's your why? What's all of that? People are looking for the thing that sounds right than the thing that really works. Because I actually believe underlying all of it, the purpose of the human existence is to elevate human consciousness, or more simply said, we're here to figure shit out because the more we figure out, the easier things are, the less emotionally hijacked we get, the more value we can create, all of that. So don't make it this, my advice, it's to a lot of the listeners, don't make it this giant thing that needs to sound perfect that you can put it up on the wall. Find your thing and start moving in a direction. So I just said a whole lot there. What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, I don't really have anything to add. You said that so well. And I think that the human connection is it, it's so complex, but also so simple. Like we were meant to be here to fellowship with each other and to be kind to each other. I firmly believe that. I'm not always perfect when it comes to that, but you know, the people aspect of it is so important. And you should never step on other people. I've said this before if you've listened to podcasts. You should never trample over people to get to where you're going because you will regret it. When you get there, you need people to support you, to pour into you. eh, I'm a firm believer that I got here due to opportunities, but also because of the people that were around me that believed in me, that supported me, that poured into me, that emotionally supported me on my hardest days when I couldn't emotionally support myself. And so the human aspect of everything we do is so important. Above all, like be a good human, be a kind human.
Well, you just gave me an idea for another T-shirt. The trampled will not help you in the future, so be careful.
You know, you're welcome. I will look forward to the royalties.
Yeah. One other thing I notice everywhere, and I guess it's to get a headline or catchy or get people to pay attention to it, but it feels like there's a bunch of leadership silver bullet chasers. The three things all leaders must do to win, the five principles of this or the two of that. Whereas, listening to your interviews and the type of leader that you are, you're just sort of studying all the factors to create more value and you're evolving as you go through that. Like we actually have to do the work. There isn't a leadership silver bullet. Say this thing and all things will be amazing. It's studying this thing and evolving and removing or modifying limiting beliefs as you go through it. So I'm not a fan of the three of this or the five of that. I mean, it can raise interesting questions to make you think about your leadership success strategy and how you create value. But there are no silver bullets out there. That's my view. What's your take on that?
I would say it's the same. And kind of going back to my comment at the beginning, kids really changed that kind of mindset for me. We now have three. We are a complete family now. But when I look at my three kids, they were all three created by the same two humans, right? And they are all so very different. One has the emotional stability of a statue, and one, if you look at them the wrong way, it's the the tears are going to go on for 4 days. There's one that is just intellectually gifted. I mean, if you say something to her, she's 4 steps ahead of you, deep in the research. And so looking at my kids and realizing, we do have foundational parenting. We have things that we've instilled in all of them. There are certain things that we do with all of them, but I have to parent them a little different to tap into, their potential, their values in building them up. And when I walk into the workplace, it's no different. How my controller learns and uptakes conversations is very different than how my director of operations does. It's very different conversation. At the end of the day, the foundational conversation is the same, but how they need to be led and stewarded and poured into is very different. And so I think as leaders, we need to understand the different principles and the different ways to lead, but also understanding that you have to be a little bit of a chameleon, or you're going to have some very strong followers and people that will be loyal to the end. And you'll have people that are never going to fully buy in because they don't feel supported.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm actually a CEO of two companies right now. One is called Dinner Table Family, and we have about 41,000 parents in our dinner table community globally. And the stories from the kids, the parents, all of them different. It's so amazing. And trying to simplify it, our goal is to help families create value intentionally together. So how do you talk about creating value, and how does each kid want to create value in the world? And to me, that leads to what's the purpose of an education? To me, it's to create value in the world. So how do you want to do it? And then now they've got all these different personalities, different styles, but it starts to kind of hone them in. And it's been fun just trying to be or being an actual super coach, helping them along that journey. So when they launch into adulthood, they're amazing value creating adults at 18. Now I'm so much older than you, more than twice your age, probably, or close to it. But when I was 17, I was on my own. I financially, no safety net, fully independent, self-reliant, all of that. And today there's a lot of kids in their 30s that aren't even close to that. So I think it's important we help our kids get ready around that. And there's no one way.
There's not. And very similar to you, while I had great, great parents and still, they're still two of my biggest mentors. It was very much the same. When I turned 18, the responsibility really went on me. You now have responsibilities. And I was given opportunities to be fiscally responsible in my upbringing. I wasn't awarded a car. I had to pay for part of my first car. And with a car, there comes responsibility, gas and insurance. And sure, my parents helped here and there. But yeah, I think that we do have that responsibility too. And when you create some of those conversations, dinner time is such an important time. And leaders that are listening, take time out of your day to have dinner with your family. I mean, it's the most impactful part of their day. I'm a firm believer in that. I was awarded family dinners most nights, and I know that my children are thankful for it as well. And so if you're a leader, create a boundary to have dinner with your family. But yeah, I think that we have a responsibility to create some other responsibility for them. As leaders, we steward them, we can lead them to water. And the saying is, you can lead a horse to water, you can't force it to drink, but you can get the tools in their toolbox so that they know how to drink.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, dinner with the family whenever you can, no devices. Um,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I work with a lot of families around the world, 4 different virtual sessions a month that I go through, and that my sister and her 4 grandkids will get together once a month. We were together last weekend, and we talk about the family goals. And this time we really focused on what it means to be a leader in the family. And it's just kind of cool watching the spark turn on inside the kids. Like, wait a minute, I can be a leader. I'm not sure we have that conversation in a lot of families. Like everybody in the family can be a leader, and look at how much stronger it makes us when you become adults. And if you do the same thing with your kids, and how we build this legacy over time,
Well, when
kind of
you
a
look
cool
at
concept.
it as like I've talked about this too. Like, I'm not an expert in my business. I know enough to be dangerous, but the people at my table, they are experts in their respective roles and they feed the information up. I can give them my opinions and, my advice. But it's the same thing in a household. My husband and I, we run the household and we have our own things that we're responsible for, but we are stronger when my boys are taking responsibility for certain things and when my daughter's taking responsibility for certain things. It shouldn't just be the parents. Just like in a business, it shouldn't the buck does stop with the CEO or whoever the leader is in the organization. They have to take responsibility. But if you have the right people in the right seats, you don't need to be ever present.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to own your role, but even my experience, early years with businesses, it can be 80 hours a week and so much fun. And then fast forward with hundreds of employees down the road, 15 hours a week to run the business at most, because everybody's doing what they agreed to do. But I still have a role. You still have a role, in it. Hey, one thing I'm curious about, you actually have your Lean Six Sigma black belt. Is that correct?
I do.
How has that helped? And one of my business partners before he passed a few years ago was Jack Welch, who really got this going at GE. And kind of fascinated in a much smaller business than GE. How has it helped the company?
Yeah, I think that, when it comes to manufacturing, I think it's super important because I think a lot of people, I mean, even and we're kind of talking about it now, like many hands make light work. But I don't think that that's always the case. When you look at it on a macro level, yes, many hands make light work. But we could be talking about, if we're looking at the 40,000-foot view of my business, it's like we have people in sales, people in marketing, people in operations, people in production, warehouse logistics, all the things, right? So that's the many hands. But within those silos, if you will, if you look at the sales, do you need many hands in that, or do you need people to fully own those roles and look at, what are um the things that we need to get done in sales, right? Well, we need to be bringing in leads and qualify them. We need to close the business, and we need to cultivate the relationships, right? And so you look at that, and then you can take it over to the production side of things. My equipment will only run so fast. It will only shoot out so much material a minute. And so when you start to look at, well, does 10 people in that production room really make the process go faster? If I can only spit out, 10,000 kgs an hour. No, you have to look at it as, we have these roles that need to get done. And how do you fit those people in the appropriate spots to create efficiencies? And so from that perspective, it's really helped. I would say we ran really lean at one point, and there was a lot of hardship there. But we've also ran in overabundance. And there's also hardship in that. There's hardship on the P&L. There's hardship in, um, are you maximizing your employees' potential? Um, and so it has helped in a lot of conversations where, I'll have somebody from a department come and say, we need another body. It's like, okay, I'm open to hearing why we need another body, but what's that another body going to do? If your idea is I just have too much work on your hands, are we allocating the work appropriately? Are we allocating it in a way that is efficient? If you have an account executive and a BDM and a customer care specialist, and your customer care specialist is supposed to be cultivating relationships, retaining business, but your account executive is doing that and not closing business, are you creating more work for yourself because you guys are not owning your roles? And so it's created this ability to, I actually love it in conjunction with Simon Sinek's Start with the Why, because you can kind of explain why we're doing something, which I think is so important. But when they start to kind of go through that, like, we can be lean, but we have to be efficient. You can't just be lean. You can't just be efficient. You've got to, there's this beautiful web that has to be created with it. But internally, I would say that has really helped with decision making, specifically when it comes to adding or reducing body count. I would also say that it has really helped in making decisions on what we produce or not. Because when revenue is not great, it's very easy for leaders to throw darts at the wall and say, we'll say yes to everything just to get something on. And then we end up doing it miserably and are not profitable because we're not good at 90% of it. And so it's helped in those two kind of decision-making processes.
Yeah, just more rational, logical approach to all of it. I actually think the number one job of the CEO is to continually and responsibly increase the value of the business. And then everybody else's job collectively, all the leaders, is to do that. And at the same time, you're creating a better customer experience at a lowering relative cost over time. It's that simple. And that's why I'm a super fan of sharing all the numbers, and I always have. I think it was early 90s. I read Jack Stack's book, The Great Game of Business, about sharing numbers with everyone. You probably have read that as well. And it's amazing how much smarter everybody was. And if people are unaware, I think, and I've heard you talk about the numbers this way a bit too, if they're unaware of, oh my gosh, we ran out of cash or we weren't profitable, the number should never be a surprise. To me, it just means they're not paying attention, and we as leaders haven't given them the financial tools to make better decisions. Did you come to that conclusion quickly and being transparent enough so they can make better decisions, or how did that evolve for you over the 4 years from EA to CEO?
That's a really good question. I would say some of it was just as a there's there are very different roles of a CFO and a CEO. I love both roles for different reasons. It kind of creates this dual control of, decision maker, executor, um, feeding information one way or the other. But as a CFO, your role is really to protect the finances, right? You're protecting the balance sheet, you're protecting the revenue, you're ensuring that the comms are in line, that there's a bottom line. And I think that a lot of CFOs get so caught up in those numbers. And, Tom, when he was in the CEO role, there was so many times where I would, bring up some strategic options or run down a path, and he would say, Cash, you could be penny wise and pound foolish, right? Like sometimes you have to spend a little bit to make a little bit, and that's hard for CEOs or CFOs to wrap their head around. Like, why would we spend? And as I stepped into the CEO role, I had to really lean into that hat. And I would say the moment that really triggered an opportunity for me to learn was an opportunity with a salesperson who made a pretty decent sale. I mean, what we do is high value stuff. So a truckload that we move is typically 150,000 plus. And he had moved a truckload of material for 100 and I think it was $162,000, which is his biggest deal ever. He was super excited about it. And then he got the commission check. And we do commissions based on um, gross profit, meaning we sold it for 162. We're taking out what it costed us to do this. And now we're going to commission you a percentage of that. So when he got his commission check, he was a little disappointed. And it was an opportunity for us to sit down and kind of go through what goes into that. You didn't just sell $162 or $162,000 that was sitting on the shelf. It costed us $100,000 just to bring material in. And then we had to put it into packaging, which cost something. And we had to have people to put it into that packaging, which cost something. And so this was this opportunity to sit down with him and communicate all of those numbers and understand that penny wise, pound foolish situation. And what he did with it was a real learning opportunity for me. Because instead of just walking away and being all disgruntled, he went back to the customer and said, what is your needs for the next 12 months? And so he took this one sale and totally blew it up, right? He could have just like the commission's so freaking frustrating, not what I was expecting. And then he 12x'd it because he got forecasting from them. And so for me, it was this opportunity to understand again the why, the what goes into everything, but also to come down to their level. And it also gained some rapport with them, which I've talked about a lot with other conversations that I've had. And when they can see you as a human and see that you're going through the same thing, there's this human aspect of it of like, Cash is a person that, goes through life like us, that has more to her than just a title. And so when it comes to the numbers side of things, I think that it is so important that not only you as a leader understand your numbers. What gets measured gets managed. I firmly believe that. If you don't know your numbers, how do you grow them? And how do you, make decisions on where you need to pivot and where you need to lean in? But if your people don't understand those numbers, then you have an even bigger issue. And what that specific salesperson learned in that was he learned where he wants to put his focus. There's certain ingredients where he's going to have an opportunity to make more than others. He learned the economy of scale when we're procuring goods for 12 months versus 1 month. We could probably procure them for cheaper. But he also learned that the cost to sell something like a single unit versus a truckload is the same cost. The timing tends to take a little bit longer, but he now has a team that he can lean into and say, you make the commission on this. He's let go of that, like the penny wise, pound foolish. Like, you make the $10 here, I'll make the 1,000 here. And that $10 will add up, but you have the time to worry about that. Whereas there's some people that are like, I'm going to take every single $10 that comes to me and the $1,000. And you run out of time, you run out of bandwidth, energy, all of it. And so, yeah, I think it's so important that you share the numbers. Why can't your company not know what the revenue is? Why can't your company not know what the gross margins are? Why can't they not know what the net margin is and understand what comes out of that, or where our high volume SKUs are, high dollar scales, things that probably aren't worth our time. So I, I'm for transparency.
Yeah, and the two most common answers I get, the most common is just they're afraid. If they see the numbers, they'll want more money. Never the case. And then two, less common, but also not good. They just won't understand. It's like, well, hey, develop them and they'll help you increase the value of your business continually and responsibly a lot faster, around that. I wish we had another couple of hours, but we're kind of running up against it here right now. I'm enjoying this. You mentioned a book or two. What are the books going to be about?
So I just started about 5 weeks ago on my first, and it really is about just that leadership and the people around you and the journey to the top. And that it's not linear. I think that so many people think that from point A to point B, executive assistant to CEO is just this linear line. And it has been just this up and down, valleys and peaks. Even sitting in the role, there's days where there are very low valleys and very high peaks. And so it really talks about that, but it also talks about um the people side of it. Like I am very passionate about the people side of it. And I know that I did not get here on my own devices. There were people that poured into me. There were people that shouldered weight when I couldn't shoulder it. And so it talks about that, and it's a little tribute to them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the people side of it is the common thread with every organization. So it doesn't matter even what you're doing. If that becomes your passion and you're creating value together, you can do it. You said something earlier where you were freely given these opportunities. My guess is you earned these opportunities and you were in an environment where it would actually get recognized, because a lot of environments don't, they're not conducive to recognizing it and providing the advancement without certain types of pedigree. But I'm sure you earned all of it. I can tell that you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did. I just think too that it wasn't, I would say for sure, yes, but that wasn't the goal. I mean, like when I had these opportunities handed to me, they were not the goal. They were definitely the reward. And I think that that's really the difference is I was just never vying for them. They were the they were the cherry on top, but never what I was looking for.
And maybe that's the distillation of the best approach to being a leader. Focus on solving the problem, creating value, measurably so, and then whatever happens, happens. A question I've gotten over the years is, well, how big do you want to get? Do you want to get to 100 million? Do you want to get to this? It's like, I just want to continually grow because it's healthy and I want to be responsible about it and not take steps that could, wipe out half or more of my business, because a lot of people depend on it. So I'm very similar to you. I never really cared about any of that stuff. I just want to keep creating more and more value, and then whatever happens as a result of that will actually happen. If our listeners, Kash, want to learn more about the work that you're doing, get in touch with you, connect, how can they do that?
Well, I would say LinkedIn is one of the best ways. I spend quite a bit of time on there. We connected there. Um, the people aspect is truly why I do what I do. And so anyone that reaches out to me for anything, whether it's business related, human related, opportunity related, I make it a point to get back to them. If you're trying to sell me something, might take me a little longer to get back, but I would say LinkedIn is one of the best places. You can also find me at our website, iconfoods.com. Um, but those would be the two main ways to get in touch.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And, my biggest takeaway is I'm just always stronger when I find more leaders in the world like you. Thank you for what you're doing. Any last thoughts or anything stand out in this conversation for you?
My only thing, and I end most of my conversations, please don't compare your journey to mine. I know mine was fast. I had different opportunities and roads presented. May not be the case for you. Um, but please don't compare or get discouraged if your journey doesn't look like mine.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. I've really enjoyed this
Yeah,
conversation.
thanks so much for having me.
Okay. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, please like and subscribe. Until next time, show your value to the world.